Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. First, I want to acknowledge families who are here in the office today in the room and elsewhere across the state. I just came from an event at Faneuil Hall celebrating what is Recovery Month, and unfortunately the numbers continue to grow. So I want to thank them for all of their resilience as we work to combat this crisis. I also want to acknowledge Governor Baker and thank him and his team. We've worked hand in hand on combating this crisis from so many different directions. And with respect to the particular Purdue Sackler matter, I appreciate the governor's support. I also want to acknowledge my team in the Attorney General's office who has been working round the clock, including responding to the 3 a.m. Filing of bankruptcy by Purdue last evening. Look, I'm here today. I wanted to give you an update on what we expected. We expected to see Purdue file for bankruptcy. They talked about doing this for many months now. So that was expected, and we are prepared to go forward and to continue to aggressively prosecute and litigate this case, both against Purdue but also against the Sacklers. It is good that this filing has happened in that Purdue is out of business. That is very good development for this country, given what Purdue has done in our view, creating the groundwork for this terrible crisis. That's a good thing, Purdue out of business. What this bankruptcy filing should not be about, however, and I want to be really clear, it should not be about billionaires looking to use the bankruptcy process as a vehicle to further shield their assets and escape accountability. And essentially why I have rejected what Purdue and the Sacklers have proposed and filed in court, and we're still reviewing the papers, I've rejected it for the following reasons. First of all, this proposed deal isn't worth nearly what they say it is. It doesn't require the Sacklers to pay back a dime of the billions of dollars they sucked out of Purdue through the sales of Oxy over the last many years. And also, it doesn't provide the kind of accountability and transparency that we need. We need the documents, we need the story told. That's the only way we're going to get justice in this case. So that's where I am. That's where many of my colleagues, again, we have many states who share the same view and will be taking the same position. So as I say, we're going to continue to review the filings, but we will be prepared to go forward and aggressively litigate this in our court. I'm happy to take questions if you have them.
Will drain the Sackler family's resources to such an extent, as their attorneys have suggested, that there just won't be as much money to go around?
Well, the Sacklers have done a pretty good job of sucking the life out of Purdue. So Purdue is essentially a shell. As you know, over the years, the Sackler family, because they were on the board, because they were actually working in executive positions within the company, year after year, month after month, were draining millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from Purdue. And so a lot of that money is gone, and then the Sacklers have, as you know, have been about the business of funneling that money into offshore accounts and the like. Breaking news on Friday, more developments there where you see it's estimated that the Sacklers most recently sucked another $1 billion from the states to place in offshore accounts. So that's the first thing. The Sacklers have sucked Purdue dry of its resources. The second thing is that the Sacklers have resources, and it is exactly because of the fact that the Sacklers have resources that are currently not on the table, that are not part of any deal, that in our view need to be part of resolution, and certainly is something that we're going to continue to aggressively pursue. I read the statements of both Purdue's CEO and the Sackler family spokesperson, and I have to say I was so incensed, although not surprised. Purdue's position is that we need to resolve this all now in bankruptcy because it's important for the company to avoid, quote, the swamp of litigation. Well, we've had a swamp of funerals and heartache here and all over this country for many years now. And it is exactly why litigation is necessary, because in our business, that's actually how you pursue justice, is through the courts. They rightly find themselves in litigation. The Sackler family spokesperson also commented that this is an example of the Sacklers being part of helping address the opioid crisis, helping bring about relief and treatment. Again, I find that comment really insensate and I think offensive to so many of us who've spent time looking at the emails, looking at the documents that show directly how Sackler family members put profits ahead of people, lined their pockets over the years at the expense of and the exploitation of so many victims.
Speaking of which, Maura, I talked to some of the same folks you met with just moments ago, and they told me that the damage has already been done. How can anything do to help?
Well, that's a good point. If you want to talk money, remember back the Mass Taxpayers Foundation released a study that showed in 2017 alone, this crisis cost our state nearly $15 billion. Last year, the governor put forward a budget that included $1 billion just for 1 year to go towards abatement and relief and treatment and help. So we know that no matter what is recovered through this particular case or through, by the way, our ongoing investigations against the other 5 manufacturers and distributors is never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. How do you put a price on a life? But that's exactly why I want accountability in the form of an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, production of the documents, and having the story be told. And I will not, or at least I will do everything in my power to ensure that these billionaires don't escape liability and aren't able to once again shield themselves, cover everything up, conceal everything, and move on with their lives, which is exactly what they're intending to try to do through the vehicle of bankruptcy.
Do you know how many other states are following suit the same way you are?
There are 25 of us now. We continue to get updates. I can tell you that we are a very strong and united group. Many of us who have spent time investigating and bringing the initial charges against, the initial case against the Sacklers, we're all on the same page about this. Massachusetts was the first state to sue and name the Sackler families. Many other states followed, and I think for those of us that have spent considerable time litigating and reviewing and investigating this matter, we feel very strongly about where we are and the continued need to be aggressive as we go forward.
Do you know of any states moving in or out of the deal? And do you address the perception that that there may be a political bent to this, that the states that are kind of opposed to the deal are mostly Democratic AGs and the ones that are signing on to the deal are mostly Republicans?
I'll tell you, this should not be a partisan issue. I do not view it as a partisan issue. This is about saving lives, and this is about our job as the people's lawyer in all of our states, doing what we think is right for our state. And all I can tell you is that having spent a lot of time with so many families here in Massachusetts, this is exactly where we need to be, and I think that's a sentiment that is also joined by many of my colleagues.
You mentioned this, but what did you think of the revelations that the New York AG's office found, that there was roughly this $1 billion worth of these wire transfers? And are you seeking those records as well? Is that something you've been trying to obtain?
Well, it's certainly, let me tell you this, it's not a revelation. Sadly, it is not a revelation because it is just a page out of the same playbook that the Sacklers have used for decades now. This is the way they operate, and so it's not a surprise to us at all, and in fact, that's been our view all along, that they have found a way to squirrel away all the profits they sucked from Purdue, and they're in offshore accounts, and they're in other investment vehicles, and they're generating all sorts of interest and the like. I'm glad that information is now more clearly available. It's been what we've been trying to say all along, including with respect to this proposed deal, why it was never going to be enough. And so that's important. Obviously, we will continue as a matter of law enforcement to do our job in pursuing those assets, in pursuing every effort to make sure those who are held accountable, those who perpetrated this are held accountable. I mean, that's our job at the end of the day as we try to do justice in what has been an incredibly unjust situation.
Are there any additional filings that you have to do for this to continue pursuing this, and where and when would those filings happen?
Well, there are additional filings. We will be making filings both in New York in the bankruptcy court where Purdue has filed, as well as in our own state court. They'll happen relatively soon, and as I say, our whole job is to move forward and be aggressive as we continue to pursue the matter.
And what kinds of filings specifically? So I was just saying that you're still pursuing it? Or?
Well, the first filing will be in New York, objecting to the proposed settlement, objecting to what they laid out. We're continuing to review those documents, but that's the first thing. We're going to oppose the settlement, and we're going to oppose any effort by Purdue or the Sacklers to stop us from litigating here in Massachusetts. As law enforcement, it is our job to go forward and pursue those matters, and so that will also be the basis of a filing.
And so you're saying that this is in no way a sincere effort to try to, as part of, lay the groundwork for a settlement. You view this as an effort to protect the family fortune, and as far as you're concerned, it's not a sincere effort.
Let me tell you what this is, okay? And I want to be perfectly clear. Again, Purdue has had basically all of its money sucked from it over the years by the Sacklers. So the money is, in fact, with the Sacklers. This proposal is simply going to put Purdue up for sale, and it will result, I guess, in purported payout to the claimants, right? But let me tell you how they want to pay for it. Again, this isn't going to involve, it's not going to require the Sacklers to pay back any of the profits they took out of Purdue from sales of OxyContin over the last many years. Not a dime. How is this settlement being funded? From the continued and future sales of OxyContin here and abroad. I want to repeat that. This settlement is to be funded. This settlement, where money's supposed to go to treat those in the throes of addiction, this settlement is only going to be made possible through the future and continued sales of OxyContin, the sale specifically of their foreign corporation. I reject that. That's offensive to me, that we would allow a settlement that allows Purdue and the Sacklers to continue to sell Oxy when every day people in this country are dying as a result of opioids. And fundamentally, you look at that, and I don't look at that as doing good or being part of the solution. I look at that very differently. They've also talked about how much money they've had to spend for lawyers, $63 million so far in 2019. It might get up to $250 million, okay? You know what would be nice? It'd be nice if they stopped litigating and paying lawyers and turned that money over to families. That's what I'd say to them. But maybe somebody has a better idea.
Last question. More, Purdue to this point has not admitted any wrongdoing, and they said moving forward they don't intend to. I'm sure you have a guess, but if you could speak to them directly, what would you want to say?
I don't know that there's much I can say to them directly that will get through to them in terms of what should happen here, because what should happen here should have already happened here. So I'm not going to waste my time or my breath speaking to the Sacklers, because they're only going to be forced to do something that is constructive and helpful through the courts. That's the bottom line. They've had ample opportunity for years now to do something constructive. They continue to fight us every single step of the way, engaging in PR campaigns, continuing to give money through philanthropic measures, and really working on their brand. We know who the Sacklers are, and unfortunately, they've proven themselves to be a most unscrupulous and uncaring group of individuals who have caused significant harm. I do hope, though, that more people will come to see this proposed deal for what it is, and most importantly, for what it is not. It's not accountability, it's not transparency, and it's not making the perpetrators pay. And that's why Massachusetts, joined by others, will continue to aggressively fight on behalf of families.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.